If you ruled a small kingdom, flanked on two sides by the biggest empire of its age, which then fell into a continent-wide civil war, you would have to make a choice about which side to align yourself with. I'm Benjamin, and this video is about a Dacian King Cotiso who had to make that choice, and made the wrong choice. The king we are looking at is King Cotiso, who came to rule modern-day Oltenia and Banat following the death of Burebista in 44 BCE. This created a power vacuum. Only a year or so after King Cotiso came to power, Rome fell into a civil war upon the assassination of Julius Caesar. At this point, we need to go back in time in two different directions from King Cotiso, so we can understand him and then come back to him and the world that he's in. First, we need to look at King Burebista, who united the Dacian tribes and made Dacia into a power to be reckoned with. In Romanian, Dacia, Dacia. In Italian, Dacia, very similar. And if I were going to make a word in Welsh for this, I would say Dacia. After King Burebista, we need to look at the Roman Republic and what was going on there, because the key feature of his life and foreign relations is that the Roman Republic was becoming the Roman Empire. So we need to go back to Julius Caesar, this guy. His actions led to a civil war in his lifetime and then another civil war after his death, which was the end of the Roman Republic. So let's look at Burebista first, beyond the borders of the Roman Republic. Burebista had come to power in 82 BCE, with his capital at Artidava not yet moved to the mountains. He faced Celtic invasions in the southwest, a disunited Transylvania, Greek colonies on the Black Sea coast, and Bastarnae, who were not yet allies, in the northeast. Key to his reign, however, is that in the Roman Republic, Sylla, a despot, came to power and proclaimed himself dictator, creating instability in both Greece and Italy, and allowing Burebista the time and space to unite the Dacian tribes into a kingdom. The Celts were closest to the center of his kingdom, so Burebista attacked the Scordisci, the Tauri and Boii, defeating each of them. See my video on the Celtic Boii people for more about that. With his western borders more secure, he moved against the Bastarnae in 55 BCE, and then against the Greek colonies along the Black Sea. These colonies he attacked for political reasons, not mere conquest. Greece had become weak, and out of the vacuum between the Black Sea and Rome, a king arose named Mithridates, who tried to remove the Romans from culturally Greek lands. After 3 bloody wars and a revolt, Mithridates was defeated, and the Roman Republic took over the Greek cities to Dacia's east. However, in 63 BCE, the Greek cities revolted against Rome, becoming independent. Burebista saw that the Roman Republic was divided at home, but would not be forever. This was his chance. If he did not take these cities, Rome would return, and he would be faced with Romans along his eastern border too. Sometime after taking these cities, Burebista or his high priest and successor, Decenius, moved to the Dacian capital from the fertile populated Wallachian plain over the mountains to Samosata. There were benefits to doing this. Samosata is in one of the most defendable positions geographically in Europe. It also made Dacia more centralized, and it lay between the major roads of the kingdom. Communication was made more efficient. But moving this capital had drawbacks and negatives as well. By moving the capital away from the bulk of the folk, the people, it made the breakup of Dacia more likely upon Burebista's death. Naturally, Rome saw this rising Dacian kingdom and its preparing itself for a more defensible position as a threat. Julius Caesar, now in power, prepared 16 legions to invade Dacia. That is around 80,000 men, with an additional grouping of horsemen and river ships. 4 days before setting off to invade Dacia, Caesar was assassinated, triggering a Roman civil war. Burebista was also assassinated. Both men were killed by their own aristocracy. A bit amusing. Both were strong men, and both acquired many enemies within their own ranks. And Burebista's kingdom split into a patchwork of shifting kingdoms, 4 or 5 at various times, with our man Cotiso sharing the plain with King Dicomes to the east. This is what happened before King Cotiso in Dacia, but now we need to know what happened before him in Rome. Julius Caesar's life was dramatic. Understatement. During Burebista's lifetime, Caesar's main foreign policy objective was preventing the peoples of northern Europe from aligning together against Rome, which they nearly did on several occasions. And so he invaded Gaul, wiping them out, and see my video on the death of the Gaulish language video for more on that. His next target was Dacia, but coming back from Gaul, he reached a river called the Rubicon. And back in the wars of Sylla, that guy, there were laws made that generals could not pass over this river with an army and be so close to Rome. They didn't want more dictators, did they? Have you ever heard the phrase, crossing the Rubicon? It means a point of no return. Once you cross, there's no going back. And Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, initiating a civil war and a chain reaction that would lead to the end of the Roman Republic. And King Cotiso's kingdom was caught up in the events of this cataclysm, shaking the Roman world. If you enjoy content like this, please leave a super like, buy me a coffee, join me on Patreon to donate to the channel so we can keep going. Thank you for watching. Let's get back to the video. A civil war ensued between Julius Caesar and Pompey, which, since Caesar had said he wanted to remove Burebista, Dacia sided with Pompey, who lost. But the war entangled Caesar for 4 whole years, which meant Dacia was for the time being safe. Caesar ruled for 5 years as a brutal yet remarkably insightful and socially aware dictator. Brutus and Cassius of the Senate led a plot which led to the assassination of Julius Caesar on the 15th of March, 44 BCE, and the beginning of the Liberators' War, which was a Roman civil war between the Liberators, who had killed Caesar, or those seeking to restore the Republic, and the Second Triumvirate, those wanting to create a magistracy to avenge Caesar, give them absolute power, and to establish a 3-man dictatorship between Marcus Antonius, Octavian, and Lepidus. It is upon the outbreak of this war which we return to Dacia. We know very little about King Cotiso. There are no images from his time of him. We know after Burebista and his high priest, Decenius, that there was a power vacuum in Transylvania in which several smaller Dacian kingdoms arose around the area, though they would unify again over the next century in opposition to Rome. Cotiso in the southwest held a key position, and is likely to have been the most powerful Dacian ruler of his age. It is likely he ruled over most of Transylvania later in his reign, extending to the east as well. But Julius Caesar would have been assassinated before Cotiso took power, and this means the Roman Republic to his south was in a state of civil war. Good in the sense that he could consolidate his power without Roman interference, but before King Cotiso, Caesar had wanted to invade Dacia. This meant Cotiso was in a dangerous political situation. Marcus Antonius and Octavian of the Second Triumvirate had a favorable position in their war against Brutus and Cassius, the assassins of Julius Caesar. King Cotiso sides against the Caesars in this war, which seems a bit of a silly thing to do, given that Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus, or Octavian, had a clear advantage by holding Italy, the center of the empire, and a majority of the Senate. But Octavian's adopted father, Julius Caesar, had nearly invaded Dacia with over 80,000 legionnaire troops. Maybe that is not an easy thing to forget. In any case, Brutus and Cassius were defeated, which was not good for Dacia and King Cotiso, as he had met with Brutus in Macedonia to discuss an alliance against Octavian, and was preparing an army to attack the Second Triumvirate, joining the war on the side of the Liberators. The Liberators lost. The war ended before King Cotiso joined in, with Octavian victorious. Not good for his small kingdom. In the mid-30s BCE, Octavian lands on the eastern coast of the Adriatic Sea and advanced inland. Agrippa's history details his march toward Dacia. Octavianus, that's Octavian, advanced inside the continent until he arrived at the Sava River in the land of the Segestans, which also belongs to the Peons, a Celtic people. In this region is a well-fortified city, protected by the course of the river and by a very large moat. This being so, Caesar very much wanted to occupy it in order to use it as a warehouse of supply in the war against the Dacians and the Bastarni, who were beyond the Istru. The Istru is their word for the river Danube. Following land and river attacks, Octavian conquers Segesta and planned an invasion of Dacia using the Sava River, which flows into the Danube. The historian Florus tells us that in the years just before Octavian crossed the Adriatic to invade Dacia, under the leadership of King Cotiso, they used to go down and devastate the neighboring lands. Whenever the Danube, frozen by frost, joined its banks, Emperor Augustus decided to remove this population, which was very difficult to approach. Thus he sent Lentulus and drove them to the other side of the Danube. From here, garrisons were placed. Thus, then, the Dacians were not defeated, but only rejected and scattered. So he's saying Cotiso had ravaged the south side of the Danube before this, provoking Octavian. If this is the case, Cotiso was likely seeing that Rome was on the brink of yet another civil war, and he wanted a strong hand going into negotiations before they began. With Octavian at Segesta, Cotiso came to discuss peace with him there. King Cotiso agreed that Dacogetans would not mix or get involved with Rome in its Balkan territories. As well as this, King Cotiso promises to help Octavian in any future conflicts. In return, Octavian forgave the Dacian king for aligning against him in the past, and Suetonius tells us in his Histories of the Caesars that this deal was to be sealed by arranging a marriage between Octavian's daughter Julia to Cotiso's son. This may have been a political move on Octavian's part, knowing that war was brewing between him and Marcus Antonius in the east. Within a couple years, Marcus cheated on Octavian's sister Octavia with Cleopatra, which gave Octavian the excuse to start yet another Roman civil war. From 32 to 30 BCE, Marcus is joined by Cleopatra in what came to be known as the War of Actium, the last civil war of the Roman Republic. However, at this point, the water gets murky because we have a record of two kings, Cotiso and Coson. Cotiso is listed as a Dacian king. Coson is listed as a Getan king. However, Dacogetan or Dacian and Getan are often used by people of the period to mean the same thing. Two trunks of the same tree. A very interconnected language family, probably, often ruled by the same people. It's just that Getans were more toward the coast. And so, what this probably means is that during the chaotic decades following Burebista's death, Cotiso expanded his territory toward the Black Sea, making an alliance with King Decomus. But Cotiso and Coson could be two different kings. We do not know for sure. What we do know is that both Octavian and Marcus Antonius courted Cotiso to join their side in this civil war. Yet despite all that Octavian offered Cotiso, even a bond to Rome with the marriage of their children, the histories of Dio Cassius say that Cotiso went over to the side of Marcus Antonius, and that the neighboring Getic king, Decomus, joined him in an alliance against Octavian and the Caesars. Maybe this was a mood of revenge for Julius Caesar and his son both, having said they had intended to wipe Dacia out. Whatever the case, it was foolish geopolitically, because Octavian had a clear advantage over his rival Marcus Antonius from the beginning of the war. The Greek historian Plutarch tells us that Marcus Antonius's general and infantry commander, Publius Cnadius Crassus, advised him to send Cleopatra away from him when he was going to Thrace and Macedonia to compete in a decisive battle of infantry. Indeed, Decomus, the king of the Getae, had promised him that he would help him with a large army. The Greek historian Plutarch, in his Parallel Lives, tells us, this army Decomus was likely a combined army from both King Cotiso and Decomus in their alliance against Octavian. During that year, 31 BCE, Marcus Antonius would not leave the Peloponnese, that is mainland Greece, which made him vulnerable because he was better at fighting on land than on sea. However, he loved Cleopatra, and she wanted the sea routes open to Egypt, so he went with her advice rather than that of his general and Dacian allies, who asked him to seek refuge in Macedonia. Never choose your war tactics based on your love for a woman. Marcus chose the second option, to fight a naval battle alongside his ally, Cleopatra. He was in love with Cleopatra. This was the Battle of Actium, one of the largest sea battles in history. But what is important for us is that King Cotiso's ally, Marcus Antonius, lost this battle to Octavian of the Caesars. The war was lost but not yet over. Octavian's general Agrippa defeated Crassus on land, and among his troops were Dacians from the kingdoms of Cotiso and Decomus. Many Dacians were killed, with many more taken prisoner and forced to be gladiators back in Rome. In fact, many thousands of Dacians were found by Octavian's general to have sided against the Caesars when Octavian, now first emperor of the new Roman Empire, and named Augustus, had offered his own daughter to the Dacian king and been betrayed by Dacia. Yes, it was only politics, but Octavian Augustus now had a politically beneficial reason to pass down hatred of the Dacian people to the commoners of Rome in gladiatorial combat. He had captured Dacians slaughtered alongside their former allies, the Suebi of the Rhineland. The Roman poet Lucan wrote, "Heavenly gods, because you hold this madness from me, that through disaster would set the Dacians and the Getae in motion, Rome should fall, and I should remain quiet." I know that's a bit of poetic language, but what this means is that fear of Dacians and hatred of them is from this point, after Octavian's victory, becoming part of Roman popular culture. This is not good for King Cotiso, nor Dacia. Just a year later, in 29 BCE, seeing that Rome had moved 70,000 troops to northern Spain to fight the last free Celts of Iberia, as well as set up garrisons in Illyria to prevent further revolt in present-day Croatia and Bosnia, King Cotiso led the Dacians across the Danube to take back lands that had belonged to Burebista before him. He brought allies with Bastarni people, led by Deldon. Dio Cassius wrote at length in his Roman history the following of what happened. Dio Cassius is talking about crossing the Danube River. That was a serious barrier in the age, a formidable obstacle. And he's talking about Marcus Crassus, a different Crassus from earlier. There were several, in his engagements with King Cotiso. At the very time when these events were taking place, Marcus Crassus was sent to Macedonia and Greece, and started a war against the Dacians in Bastarni. I have shown above for what reasons they and the Romans went to war. Crossing the Ister, that is the Danube, they subdued Moesia, which was before them. They subdued the tribals, or tribes, the neighbors of Moesia and the Dardanians. But after the Hyumus Mountains had been crossed, and the Danteletians, allies of Rome, had invaded Thrace, Crassus sent out against them, partly to help Sitas, king of the Danteletians. He drove them out without a fight. As they retreated to their country, he, Crassus, followed them. And thus the land called Sigetica, that is around Sofia in modern-day Bulgaria. After this was brought under their control, and thus the land, Sigetica, was brought under the control of the Romans. And he attacked Moesia, which he devastated. When attacking a fortified position, the Roman vanguard suffered a defeat. Crassus came to the aid of the vanguard with the rest of the army, and crushed the enemy, and besieged and conquered it. That is, he conquered a city south of the Danube, just south of it. The Dacians retreated toward the Danube with their Bastarni allies. Crassus was cruel to them, and he chased them, burning down a sacred forest that they hid in to escape. They were able to get back across the river Danube, however, to escape the Romans. A year later, in 28 BCE, King Cotiso crossed the Danube again to take revenge on the Danteleti who had betrayed them. It looks like he gets his revenge on these people, and he ravages Thrace before Rome can send Crassus back to fight him. When he meets Crassus, they have several indecisive battles. No clear winner. However, King Cotiso realizes that Rome can carry on this war for much longer than he can, so he makes peace and retreats back across the Danube. So, he got revenge upon those who betrayed him. He was able to bloody Rome's nose without being beaten, but he did not beat Rome either, in that he was clever enough to cut his losses without being beaten. That takes a bit of talent, yeah? However, he had attacked Rome, either through allies or directly, at least 3 times, maybe 4. And the new Roman Emperor Octavian, who had become Augustus, was losing patience with King Cotiso. There is suggestion of a Roman incursion into Dacia, that King Cotiso was beheaded by Rome sometime around the year 26 BCE, and his head taken to Rome and paraded through the streets, but there is no actual evidence this happened. What we do know is that in the year 9 BCE, the Romans lost their patience with whoever was ruling the area where King Cotiso was, but this was over 15 years later, and they sent in a consul and governor, Marcus Vinicius, in the year 9 BCE. An inscription from the time, southeast of Rome, still says this today. It reads, Marcus Vinicius, son of Publius, held the office of consul, 15th holy man, praetor, quaestor, legate Augustus protector, that's governor, in Illyricum, first to have crossed the Danube River, led an army against the ranks of Dacians and Bastarni, which he defeated, and also beat Cotini, Ossi, and Anartii, and brought them under the rule of Augustus and the Roman people. And it's by this point that King Cotiso was dead. But the wars between Dacia and Rome would continue for another century. However, whereas before Cotiso, Rome was a defensive republic and did not invade Dacia, from this point forward, Dacia would be playing defense against a Roman Empire and a Caesarian dynasty of emperors who wanted revenge upon its kings for having sided against them in 2 Roman civil wars. When you are a smaller independent nation and your much larger neighbor has a civil war, you had better choose the winning side. Dacia did not choose the winning side. Watch this video, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.